So what if you wanted to find an explicit and recursive formula for the sequence given by a function? Well, first of all, we note that even though the notation is different, it's no different than what you have done in the past. So instead of P sub n, it's f of x equals. And there'll be an n in there. There would be an n in there normally. But in this case, it's a function of x. So you'll just have an x in there somewhere surrounded by other operations and symbols. We also could do the recursive, which normally would be p sub n equals some function of p sub n minus 1. In this case, we're going to have, instead of p sub n minus 1, we're going to have f of x minus 1 in there somewhere, surrounded by operations and numbers. Again, the idea of recursive is that it tells you what to do for the next term given what happened on the last term. Okay, so let's figure out the explicit. We'll start with that. First of all, we are going on the assumption that the sequence is linear. If it turns out not to be linear, then we'll make an adjustment. But we're going on the assumption that we have linear sequence given by this function. Well, what is the common difference then? Common difference. Cat has an opinion on that. Well, it's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. 10 minus 5 over 20 minus 17. Because the amount that you change every time per unit of time, in other words, the common difference, is what we think of as the slope of the line, and that's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we have 5 over 3 for that. Okay. Now, let us get an explicit formula. We could use point slope form. The equation of the line passing through the point x1, y1, x sub 1, y sub 1, and having slope m is y minus y1 equals m x minus x1. But of course, here the slope m, the amount that f of x here changes per unit change in x, which we weren't actually given unit changes. These aren't changes of 1 here. That's why we had to use the slope formula, is just this 5/3. So this 5/3, that's what m is. Then for the point, we can use any point we want, but we'll go with 17.5. So y minus 17 equals 5 is what y is. Y minus 5 equals 5/3 x minus 17. Now, you could do a lot with this. This is the answer, the equation of the line explicitly. You could write it in all different forms. Mom is going to be fine with just adding 5 to both sides of this. So plus 5, y equals 5/3 x minus 17 plus 5. 5/3 x minus 17 plus 5. Recursive. Recursive tells you how to get the next term given what the last term was for any term in the sequence. Okay, now, and of course, to be complete, it needs to tell you where to start it. Otherwise, you wouldn't really know what the sequence is. Often they skip that, but here they don't. They start it with f of 17 equals 5. I mean, it's right there, right? I mean, it's right there. When x is 17, y is 5. So f of 17 equals 5. And now we want a recursive, which we said that was going to be, that's going to have an f of x minus 1 in there somewhere. Okay. Well, what are we doing? We're adding 5/3 every time. So f of x equals, the new term is the previous term, subtract 1 from x, plus 5/3. Now, we can't actually test this with the data, but the logic does appeal to us because this statement here is saying exactly that the new term is, and the equal sign is the is, right? It equals means is. The previous term, f of x minus 1, right? X minus 1. So if we're talking about the 17th term, then it's the 16th term plus 5/3. Hope you find this helpful.